Hi spinning friends, welcome to another Spinning Sara tutorial video. Today we are going to talk about building a stable cop on a drop spindle and also on support spindles. This was requested by the viewers, so this one is just for you guys. Thank you so much for voting on the community tab on what video you would like to see. So we are going to talk about how to build a stable cop on a drop spindle and also on a Tibetan and a Russian style spindle. It's not very hard. There's really only two things that you need to know in order to build a stable cop. And the first one is consistent tension. The second one is no overlaps. So I will explain both of those two rules to you in more detail in just a minute. Let's jump into it. All right, friends, so we have three spindles here. We have a top whorl drop spindle, and then we have two support spindles. This one is what I would consider to be a Russian type spindle. It has a small whorl that spins very quickly. Even though you cannot see it, this shaft is very skinny and does not have any weight bearing on the spindle. This is more of a Tibetan style spindle. It has a much bigger whorl. Pretty much all of the weight distribution is right down here at the middle. It has a wider base that you can work with, and depending on the spindle that you are using will depend on the type of cop that you will want to create. Now, there are spinners who do differently shaped cops on their top whorl spindles. They're kind of hourglass shaped, and those are also totally fine to build and work with. I personally do not use them. I find this sort of tornado shaped cop to be very easy to maintain and build. So this is what I generally use and what I will be teaching you how to do. And then these two are the two spindle cop shapes that I work with when I support spin on a Tibetan or a wide base support spindle. It's easy to just build a nice tall cylinder and then a cone at the top that's gradually sloping. The more gradual your slope is, the easier it is to maintain the cop stability. So we will talk about how to build this one. We'll also talk about this one. And really, before I go into the white one, these two shapes can actually be exactly the same. So if you have a top whorl spindle and you want to build your cop to look something like this, where it is a long cylinder and then a sloping cone, you can totally do that too. It's just going to be a longer cop for you to deal with because of the natural shape of the spindle. The top, or the bottom of the top whorl and the top of the Tibetan whorl provide a nice, generally stable, flat surface for you to be able to bump your singles up against. So it provides a base of stability for those cops. Now, with this one, this is the cop style that I use for pretty much any Russian type spindle. Also, medieval spindles that have the stick and then the clay or stone whorl down at the bottom. I use this same shape to build on those as well because I have lots of space to play with because there's not a whorl in the way, and because there is no wide flat base to build on, this provides me with the stability that I am looking for. Now, I'm going to show you this, and luckily I don't have my fingernails painted today. So if you can see my fingernail here, when I push on this, my fingernail turns white underneath. So I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on this cop and it is not moving. There is no movement with this cop. Like, it's not, I mean, yes, it is squishing because it's yarn. It's going to be squishy, but it's not sloppy squishy. It's not soft squishy. It's firm squishy. It's kind of the difference between a very soft, fluffy spring mattress versus a firm memory foam. Okay, memory foam gives a little, it molds itself, but it springs right back. And that is what we're looking for when we are building any kind of spindle cop. This one is the same. Still putting pressure, still turning my fingernail white, but the cop remains stable. All right, so before I get into showing you guys how I make these cops, I need to make a case, make an argument for using a temporary cop. And it's more important when we're talking about a support spindle, because with a drop spindle, typically you're standing and you're making very, very, very long, you know, as 5 foot, however tall you are, you're probably making a cop or a make that is about that length. So that's much longer than just your arm span, and probably only half of an arm span because one is being still and one is being used to draw across. So when we're talking about building a stable, not going to go anywhere cop on a support spindle, I highly recommend, that you employ the use of a temporary cop. So the little, you know, inch or so wide baby cop that you build above your permanent cop, just to hold some extra yarn so you can really focus on building your cop when it's time. And the reason for this is because you have more that you can play with. You can lay down your foundation better. You can start to build everything better. I've talked to other people, particularly the peahen, and she says that anytime she shows a spindle cop on social media, it is one that she has done with a temporary cop and then focused on winding her cop. I 100% agree with her. I find 100%, I'm willing to say it, 100% of the time, my spindle cops have been better and more stable, completely stable, when I have used a temporary cop to then focus on building a stable cop afterwards. So if you're a die-hard, no temporary copper, I highly recommend that while you are learning to build a stable cop, that you employ the temporary cop just to get into the practice of how things should lay down and how they should look as you go, because otherwise you're not going to have enough singles to play with to really build the foundation very good and to really know what you're looking at. So please, 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 while you're learning, use a temporary cop. I promise you don't have to use it forever if you absolutely hate it, but it's really going to be helpful while you're learning. All right, so I have these 3 spindles for you guys. Because this shape and this shape pretty much follow the exact same instructions, I'm going to use a top whorl to show you guys how to do that. Then when we go to the football shape, or the egg shape if you prefer, eyeball shaped maybe. Once we move over to the harder to work cop, we will switch over to a Russian spindle, which I have here. This is what I would consider a Russian. All the weight is right here. There is no wide base to build on. This particular one has a nice gradual slope up to a middle ground. It does make building down here a little funny. So I want to show you all of that. All right, so here we have 2 medieval stick spindles. They generally, you put a small whorl on the base here and that's it. But the reason I have these here is to show you what a full football shaped cop looks like. And also, this is the fiber that we're going to be using to wind our cops. So I'm going to be slowly unwinding this and winding it onto our new cops. That way I don't have to use a temporary cop and I don't have to spin and then show you and spin and then show you, because That would take a lot of video or a whole lot of editing, and that sounds crazy. So I have two spindles that we're gonna fill. We're gonna do the best we can. All right, so here we go. First up is our top whorl. And again, this applies for Tibetan spindles also. Whether you wind left or you wind right is totally up to you. I wind to the left, so I'm going to get this situated on this spindle. Now that I've got this here and I'm pulling on it, it's not going anywhere, I'm going to slide it all the way up to the top, and it's still not going anywhere. Now, kind of think of this as you're laying a floor in your house. You want each board of the floor to bump right up against the next one, or of a deck, even better. You want it bumped right up against the first one, but you don't want them to overlap, because overlapping on a floor would be crazy, right? You'd have all kinds of crazy bumps. We're trying to avoid those crazy bumps on here too. So we want to wind this so the layers almost touch. They don't have to touch completely. You can see there's a gap in between these singles that I'm laying down. The point is, I'm not going up and then back down. We don't want crisscrosses. No crisscrosses. We're laying this foundation nice and even. Okay, we want it to be as stable as possible, and the only way that you are going to have stability is if you wind it carefully and with no overlaps. The other piece of this, there's two pieces to a stable cop. The first piece is good tension, consistent tension. All right, you want to maintain force on your spindle or against your spindle on your singles. You want to maintain a consistent tension on your singles. This way, when you push on them, they don't give. We don't want a give. We want it to stay nice and stable. How long you make your first layer is completely up to you. But this is a foundation layer, not a single overlap in this layer. Then, once you've gotten this as long as you want to make it, and it doesn't have to be the size of your finished cop. Your finished cop could come all the way down here. We're just laying the very first part, okay? Once you've gone down as long as you want to go down, we're going to then circle back up to the top. Now, this is another point. You don't want overlaps. You want the spiral to go back up. Again, this is all part of having a good foundation, not overlapping any more than necessary. We're still maintaining our tension on our single. The tension is step number one for a reason. It is the most important part of this. I've reached all the way back up to the top. I'm back up to where my whorl is. So now I'm going to sort of do the exact same thing I did when I went up. We're just going to cross and go right back down. We're not trying to lay them down side by side anymore. We're just going back down in a spiral. Your spirals can be as big or as small as you want them to be. They don't have to, you could spiral this. Okay. I wouldn't say spiral it so big that you only have like 2 or 3 wraps on a layer. I would say, maybe 1/4 of an inch apart in your spirals is probably the max that you want to go. Once you reach the bottom, I recommend going 1 or 2 wraps below where you went before, and then go right back up. Still maintaining the tension on your singles. And now I've hit the top again. So this is a really good, really sturdy, this yarn, look, I'm wiggling it. It is not going anywhere because that first foundation layer was laid down like planks on a deck, and we maintained excellent tension while we were wrapping. Excuse me. So from here, you continue going back and forth. You can also do half layers. So if you know that you want to build the tornado shaped or the cone shaped cup, you don't have to go all the way down. You can go halfway. And then on your next one, you can go 3/4 of the way. And then on your next one, you can go halfway again and alternate. And then the next one, go all the way down. When you go all the way down, I recommend going to the very end and wrapping 1 or 2 extra wraps on the actual shaft. And that tightness around the shaft is what keeps this bottom cone in check. So I'm just going to wrap for you guys now so you guys can see this, and I'm probably going to speed it up just so we can have a not too long video. All right, so you can see up here is fatter than down here is. On that last pass, I was careful to make sure to keep these last few wraps very tight on the shaft because they are providing the foundation for subsequent layers that are going to go over top of them. So consistent tension and then a little extra tension when you're wrapping straight on the shaft so it's really nice and tight to provide those base layers. This exact same method works if you are winding a Turkish spindle. Now, this is not how I wind a spindle. I wind the other way when I am winding on a spindle cup. So this is like really foreign for me, but it's the same motion, more or less. You want to maintain tension and spiral it up and then spiral it right back down. Trying not to overlap your singles on the layer that you're wrapping. So that's what I call not overlapping more than necessary. So I know you guys, because this is all one color and it's kind of variegated, it's hard to see the individual layers, but each layer overlaps each other, obviously, but each layer, the layer that you're working on should not overlap itself. So if I come back up here, you don't want your wind on to look like this. This is messy, and even if you maintain really good tension, this is more likely to come apart because you have overlaps, and those overlaps provide gaps, and the gaps are where the air hides, and where the air hides, that's a pocket that allows for collapse. So this is why I don't want your layer, your single layer should not overlap itself. You want each layer to look sort of like this. maintaining good constant pressure. And it doesn't have to be exact. You can have some stuff that's really close together and some stuff that's farther apart. It's okay. The main thing is that this layer does not overlap itself. Nowhere does this crisscross action happen. We don't want crisscrossing. We want nice, flat wraps. Then go right back up the other direction. And that layer is not overlapping on itself. That layer is its own separate layer, maintaining good strong tension, and nothing goes anywhere. All right, we've wound a little piece. I need to let my arm have a break. So let me talk to you about this. This stuff up here is really easy to maintain. It's not a terribly steep angle, okay? This from here goes into a much steeper angle from about this layer down to here. This part here is the problem point. This point here is the failure point of most of your cops. And what happens is everything just starts to slide. Everything slides. So in order to avoid the sliding, I recommend that you wind these areas extra tight and probably in wider crisscrosses, kind of like this. And with this one, because it's more variegated, you may be able to see it better, but you can see this is a great big X, and this is a great big X, and this is a great big X. Maintain the extra tension on those areas, and it will help keep them more stable. And I do mean extra, like you need to actually put a little bit more oomph into the steep decline areas of your spindle. Same thing with this one, actually, yeah. This area is much trickier to deal with than this area because it's steeper. This is a much steeper incline than this one. This one's a much more gentle incline. This was very easy to maintain. I just slowly overlapped it each time and then worked my way back down. And also making sure when you're doing inclines like this, don't stop here and then go back up. With any kind of steep incline, you want to come down to the other end of this thick part and then work your way back up. And the reason for that is if you just stop right here, that makes kind of like a continental divide, and it creates a break point where this area of the cop will easily slide off if you don't overlap them. So when you're focusing on, and even down here, it's the same scenario. This is a much steeper edge, so you're gonna wanna come up to here and then come back down, and come up to here and then come back down. So if we were to imagine this as a naked spindle. Here, let's do it on this one. This is what your cops should sort of look like if you are using a Russian spindle. All right, so you want to put your leader on and kind of get it situated in the middle and then build down as far as you want to go, because this cop is a little less stable, period, just because of its shape. Go down as far as you want to go, and you're probably not going to build much more than that. I wouldn't recommend going all the way down because you do need some overlap room. So probably here is where I would go to. And we're going to imagine that this is a line, and we're going to make dots on the line. So we know that we want the majority of our cop, if we're trying to make it a football shape, our cop is probably going to be about this big. We want the majority of our cop to be kind of right here where this little divot is. So from here, we're gonna wind all the way back up. And then we're gonna come down, but we're not gonna go quite as far down. We're only gonna go to about here. And then we're gonna wind all the way back up to about here. And then here and here and here and here. And then you're gonna kind of do the exact opposite. You're going to wind from here to here, to here, to here, to here, and grow your cop length each time until you're back at the width you're looking for. By always crossing over this big spot right here, you're going to make it fatter here and skinnier on the outside edges. So that cop ultimately will look pretty much exactly like this. It's going to be a long, skinny, I think it's an ellipse is really what the shape of it is. But you're going from here to here to here to here, making shorter movements until you're right here. And then you can spend an entire temporary cop or, you know, a make or so and just go right here because we are building up this fatter portion. And then we start getting bigger with each of our winding paths until we're filling out the entire ellipse again. And then you can do this entire ellipse 2 or 3 times and then start making smaller passes again. And it's going to help build up that centerpiece because this piece is always getting a pass of yarn, no matter what. The centerpiece always needs to get a pass. So if you're going from here to here, this got it. And then here, this didn't, but everything else did. And then down to here, this still got it. So you can see why this gets fat in the center because we're focusing most of our yarn in the center part of this. All right. I don't know that that's going to be stable enough, but we'll try. So like I said before, I'm not going to come all the way down on this because I want this extra space to be able to build out. So we're going to go back over the top and go up this way. And because of the shape of this spindle and because there's a little lip right here, I usually stop right there and then go back down. And I'm going to stop right here and go back up. Taking care to not overlap my singles as I'm winding. And maintaining a good tension. Going back up now. Thanks. And up again. And this little divot I just generally fill in while I'm here. And go back down. Almost all the way. Now we're going to go back up. I particularly like these type of spindles that have this type of shaft situation where it flares slightly and then goes back up, because it allows me to spend the majority of my time right here filling in this area and making this incredibly stable before I start focusing on the cones that are steeper. This is a wand from Woodland Handcrafts. Carl makes excellent spindles. His support spindles are my absolute favorite spindles for support spinning. In fact, other than a couple of medieval stick spindles, they are the only support spindles that I have in my herd of spindles. So now that I have completely covered up the divot here, I can start moving my cop up higher on the shaft to give me more space. This little divot area is going to be the center of my cop eventually. So you can see there, I went above just a little bit and then came right back down. And same thing down at the bottom. All right, so I've done some off-screen winding. My hand needed a break, and you can see that I've spent most of my time building right here because this is fatter, and this is pretty thin, and this is a nice gradual slope. So I want to show you how I've been doing this. I've been going up and down over the bulb part of the cup, making longer and longer passes like this. And now as I come back to this part here, I grip a little bit tighter to make sure that I go above this cop line and wrap it nice and tight and come back up the other way. The more gradual you can make this slope, whether you have one of these or two, the more gradual this is, the more stable it is going to be. And alternate some really thin layers where the spaces between your singles are really thin, and then some thicker layers where the spaces between your singles when you lay them down are thicker. And even that variation between thick and thin will help you build a more stable cup. That is really all there is to it. Whether your cup stops here and this is as big as you make it, or you make it twice this big, as long as you are laying down your singles nice and tidy and not overlapping them until you start a new layer, and you make this cone shape as gradual or as tall as you can, keep it in a nice and gentle grade. And also, when you wind up to the actual shaft material, make sure that those few wraps that you do right up here at the top are really nice and tight. You want them hugging your shaft really, really tight. Like, this is not budging with my fingernail. You want it to be really nice and tight right there, because it kind of acts like a hair tie. There are lots of people who will put rubber O-rings or a hair tie or something on their spindle shaft to prevent their cops from sliding. But you can accomplish the same thing if once you hit shaft, you wrap really, really tight for like 2 or 3 rotations of your shaft and then come back up. And those really, really tight pieces act as a really stable, almost like cement-like foundation for your subsequent layers that you put over top. I'm going to go back up to the tippy tops one more time so I can show you guys. This end of this cup is going to be more stable because this side flares out again. So it's probably not going to go anywhere. I'm still wrapping this spot tighter than up here, but only a little bit, and it will be stable down there. This end up here, because it continues to taper to a smaller diameter, that is your failure point right here. And so you want to wrap those nice and tight and then come on back up. And like I said, never do your boomerang style wrapping. Don't stop on the incline. So if you're wrapping down the incline, don't only wrap this far on the incline. Wrap all the way to the thickest part of your cup and then go back up to your incline. Because if you only wrap to, let's say, here, it still runs the risk of falling off. You want to go to a thicker part of your cup and then turn around and go back, because these layers that you wrapped up here anchor these ones that you've already wrapped up there, and it just makes everything stick together. So always wrap to a thinner point over top of your thicker spot. Just like this. That's it. All right, friends, that is all that I have for you today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and share this video with others that you think might also benefit from a tutorial on how to build a stable cop. Please also remember that if you have this issue, the supported spindle issue of Ply Magazine, there is an article called Stable Cop, written by me, that goes over the information that I went over in this video. Also, there's another article in this magazine called Fold It, and it's also written by me, and it talks about how to spin from the fold on your support spindles. It is issue 29 of summer 2020. If you are interested, you can go get a copy of it for yourself. Back issues are available at Ply Magazine. So you can reach out to them if you'd like to have your own copy. Thank you so much for your support of this channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and possibly consider becoming a channel member. We really, really appreciate all of our channel members. They're listed right here. Thank you, guys. And until next time, happy spinning.